The post-election liberal media meltdown continues as the Associated Press prepares to fire 8% of its staff, while desperate left-wing media figures cling to their careers by trying to make peace with President Trump. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Some really great news coming out of Congress, which is that about 5 days ago, I called attention to the fact that the first ever identifying member of Congress was just elected. This guy, Tim McBride, Democrat from Delaware, obviously Democrat. And I said, look, no one's really talking about this, but this is a pretty shocking turn of events. And the Republicans are going to have to deal with this issue, which is that this guy is probably going to want to use the women's bathroom. And so Republicans need to either hold the line and show that we actually do oppose ideology for the purpose of justice and it's good politics, or the Republicans are going to let this guy use the women's bathroom, and then we're implicitly going to be giving up the whole ideology premise. We're going to be saying, yeah, for all intents and purposes, a man really can become a woman, because the Republicans don't want to have courage and grow a spine along with some other appendages, perhaps. So in any case, I said Republicans have to hold the line on this. They got to make sure that this guy, no disrespect to him, but they got to make sure this guy uses the proper bathroom. And Nancy Mace has done it. A Republican member of Congress has done that, introduced a resolution to ban men from the Capitol Hill ladies' room. We will get to that in a moment. First, though, I want to tell you about Leaf Home. Go to leaffilter.com/Knowles. There is something magical about this time of year. The crisp air, the changing colors. It's the kind of beauty that reminds you why homeownership is part of the American dream. But you know what's not magical? Standing on a ladder, cleaning leaves out of your gutters. Whether you've spent countless weekends unclogging gutters, or you're like me and barely know what your gutters look like, it is time for a permanent solution you can trust. Gutters might seem simple, but when they're not properly maintained, they can lead to expensive water damage, foundation issues, and rotting siding. That is why I trust Leaf Filter. Their patented technology keeps everything out except water. No holes, no gaps, just a perfectly engineered system that protects your entire home. With over 1 million homeowners trusting Leaf Filter, you know you're in good hands. Do not miss out on your last chance of the year to save up to 35% off when you protect your gutters with Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system. Schedule your free inspection at leaffilter.com/Knowles. That is our lowest price of the year at up to 35% off. LEAF filter.com/Knowles. See representative for warranty details. Before we get to bathrooms on Capitol Hill, the establishment media continue to collapse. The Associated Press is expected to cut 8% of staff in layoffs and buyouts. 8% of the workforce. It's not all in news, but a lot of it is in news. Looks like half, or maybe a little bit less than half, of the staff reductions will hit the news division. So you especially feel bad for the guys who are working back office, behind the scenes. You don't feel so bad for the news division because the Associated Press is one of the most egregious peddlers of fake news out there, in many ways worse than the New York Times and the Washington Post. But what the Associated Press is saying is, we all know this is a time of transformation in the media sector. Our customers, both who they are and what they need from us, are changing rapidly. This is why we've focused on delivering a digital-first news report. We now need to accelerate on this path. Yeah, apparently they're not going fast enough because they're going to have to fire almost 1 in 10 employees. Couldn't happen to a nicer media organization. You always feel bad when people lose their jobs, even when they lose their jobs from bad companies. You don't know. Some of these guys, they're just trying to feed their families, right? So you feel bad. However, they can go get other jobs. The Associated Press needs to be taken down a peg. The Associated Press is so radical. And because it has this patina of neutrality or objectivity, just even in the name, the Associated Press. This isn't, the Daily Democrat. It's the Associated Press. It makes you believe, because the Associated Press appears in so many other newspapers, it makes you believe that it's this objective kind of paper or news organization. It's not. The Associated Press has led the way on so much propaganda. The Associated Press, in the style guide, banned the phrase illegal alien a few years ago. The phrase illegal alien, they say you can't do it. An illegal alien no more. You can call them undocumented Americans. You can call them dreamers. You can call them whatever. But you can't say the phrase illegal alien. Now, how's that? Illegal alien is the most technically precise way to refer to a foreigner, alien, who has come into our country against the law, illegal, and who continues to be here against the law. Any other way you refer to an illegal alien is a euphemism, becomes charged with polemic or propaganda value. But that's, of course, what the Associated Press wants. They want you to call these people undocumented Americans because though that is literally false, they're not Americans. Whatever they are, they're not Americans. They want people to view the illegal aliens as Americans so that they will be less likely to enforce immigration law, so that they will be less likely to deport them, so that they will be more likely to make them citizens and give them amnesty. Black and white. The Associated Press style guide says, you have to capitalize the B in black, but you should lowercase the W in white. So the Associated Press comes out and says, black people, better, more important, deserve more prominence than white people. White people need to be taken down a notch, need less prominence. I mean, just overt racism, if that word has any meaning anymore. Certainly it is being pushed by the Associated Press. The Associated Press pushes the ideology by demanding that people use the singular they. The singular they is how demons refer to themselves in the Bible, or the singular plural pronouns. You know, my name is Legion for we are many. But they insist on this because while traditionally he and him and his are the first or the singular gender neutral pronoun, not first person, obviously third person, singular gender neutral pronoun, because of feminism and then certainly with the Associated Press says, no, we'll have to say they. So, hey, my buddy John, they is a great guy. They are a great guy. Are they plural? Hey, go talk to them. Them, but it's a him, but it's just illiterate beyond being ideological. And then finally, story I covered yesterday on the show, the Associated Press is now trying to persuade people that a 1,000-year-old Christian motto, Deus vult, God wills it. This was the response of the audience when Pope Urban II said that he would give aid to Eastern Christians who were being slaughtered by Muslims. They said, Deus vult, God wills it. That phrase is now apparently a white supremacist motto, according to the Associated Press. These guys are probably the worst of the worst when it comes to so-called news organizations. And they're getting smacked. 8% reduction in staff. I feel bad personally for the guys who are losing their jobs, for some of them at least, maybe not all of them. But this had to happen to the Associated Press. Reality has to reassert itself in the end. There needs to be a correction. Now, some Democrats understand this. Spokesman for Jill Biden, current First Lady, maybe current president, depending on how decisions are being made in the White House. A Jill Biden spokesman says, Democrats need to stop with the constant accusations of white supremacy. This guy, Michael LaRosa, says that the notion that opposing DEI makes you a white supremacist is insane, and it makes Democrats look insane, and it repels voters. This was in response to a clip I played yesterday of an MSNBC gal. I played it either yesterday or on Friday. An MSNBC gal calling Pete Hegseth a known white supremacist. Pete Hegseth, as mainstream a conservative as it gets, says he's a white supremacist based on nothing. Because he's got a cross tattoo, the Jerusalem cross, another 1,000-year-old Christian symbol, and Deus vult, 1,000-year-old Christian motto, and then he's got a We the People tattoo. I don't know what else she's saying makes him a white supremacist. So Michael LaRosa, this Democrat spokesman, says, this SHIT has to stop. Opposing DEI initiatives does not make you a white supremacist. Conversations and demonization like this are a big part of the reason we got our ASS-ES kicked. The answer to extremism is not more extremism. Voices like this on the left are turning the Democratic Party into a joke. Fact check, 100% true. We've got to knock it off and get serious guests who are going to diagnose politics, not make it worse. Notice, he's speaking about this guest on MSNBC. So he's not even saying we need to get better candidates. He's not even saying we need to get better consultants. He's saying we need to get better guests. We need to get better communicators in the media. We need to get people, serious people opining about policy and politics, not one-upping each other for or competing for who can make the most provocative insult about a Trump nominee you oppose. This is really good practical advice. And I say this as someone in the business of giving political opinions on camera. He says we need serious guests who are going to diagnose politics, not make politics worse, but give an accurate and precise interpretation of what's going on in politics. Not just try to one-up each other with the most provocative and crazy statements. This is good practical advice. I have sometimes thought that if I were a little less measured, if I were a little bit more of a bomb thrower, if I were a little looser with my tongue, maybe I would get bigger ratings. But that's only ever true in the short term. In the long term, if you say things that are crazy, that over time are revealed to be disconnected from reality, people are going to tune you out. It's a great short game. People come up, but they burn real fast and they fizzle. But if you want any staying power, if you want people to continue to listen to you in the long run, you have to say things that are true. And you have to say them in a way that is serious and responsible. Responsible in the fullest sense of that word, meaning responsive to changing circumstances, responsive to people. Most people voted for Trump. Almost half of Hispanics voted for Trump. 1 in 5 black guys voted for Trump. Say what you will about Trump, it's hard to call him a white supremacist. You want to call Trump a sexist, a misogynist? Most married women voted for Trump. 40% of women under the age of 30, we're talking about largely single women here, voted for Trump. Say what you will about him, to call him a misogynist? The first 2 women ever to win presidential campaigns, running presidential campaigns, both of them worked for Trump. Okay, Trump's administration is largely staffed up with strong, intelligent women to prove Mark Cuban wrong. He didn't do it in order to prove Mark Cuban wrong, but that does prove Mark Cuban wrong. Okay, and I think Michael LaRose is totally right. He says, the more we go on TV and say crazy, preposterous things, the more likely people are to tune us out, and then Trump's going to win even more votes next time if he ran for a 3rd term. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? No, whoever the next Republican is, they're going to win even more votes maybe because Democrats are disconnected from reality. I've noticed this. I have a lot of liberal friends and family members. I'm from New York, went to a very liberal university, lived in Los Angeles, worked around liberal industries. So I have a lot of libs in my family. Their tone today is very different than it was in 2016 or 2020 even. They hate Trump still, but they'll come out and they'll say, whatever. If they even address the election at all, they'll say, look, man, he won the popular vote. All right. Obviously, something isn't working in the Democrat Party. And I include within the Democratic Party, the liberal media establishment. You think the Democrat politicians are getting punished by losing their elections? Look what's happening. CNN, massive layoffs over the summer, and then looks like they're planning layoffs again. MSNBC might not even exist in a couple months, and now the AP firing almost 1 in 10 employees. That's what happens. That's what happens when you deceive your audience. And that's what happens when you disconnect what you are doing from reality. Now, when you want to make your organization really efficient, you got to check out Ramp. Go to ramp.com/Knowles. Are you feeling trapped by outdated finance software? Then it is time to ramp up your financial game with Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. Ramp gives you control like you wouldn't believe. They allow you to issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions that you set. Expense reporting is automated. No more wasting time at the end of every month trying to piece together who spent what. Ramp software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time. You'll be closing your books 8 times faster. On average, businesses using Ramp save 5% in their first year. Best part is that Ramp is so easy to use, you get started in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. Right now, get $250 off when you join Ramp. Go to ramp.com/Knowles, ramp.com/Knowles, Canada BLES, ramp.com/Knowles. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Right now, head on over ramp/KNOWLES. While the liberal media are getting absolutely pummeled into the ground by changing political realities, some liberal media figures are desperately trying to cling to their careers. Most notably, Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC, who have been some of the most vitriolic voices against Trump for years. They knew Trump years ago. They have been absolutely vicious against Trump up until yesterday, I guess. And then now that Trump has won with the popular vote, with the Rust Belt, with the Sun Belt, with all sorts of people that the Democrats said Trump couldn't win. Now, all of a sudden, they're striking a tone of reconciliation.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications.
We agreed that we don't want to lose our jobs. We agreed. Well, Joe and I agreed. I don't know if Trump agreed with that, but we agreed, look, we'd rather have our show than not have our show. Until yesterday. These guys, for years, have been calling Trump Hitler. Now they say, then they come on their show after Trump wins in a landslide. They come and they say, look, we might not see eye to eye with Hitler on every issue, okay? And when we sat down with Hitler, we told him, Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Hitler, we don't totally agree with all of your policies, but I think it's really important, Hitler, that we talk. I really please call me Hitler. Please, please, Adolf. Oh, these guys. Wow. I was wondering at first, why did Trump take the meeting? I'll tell you why Trump took the meeting. Because it is delightful to watch these people eat crow. It is delightful to watch these people in their very bearing, in their very comportment, admit how wrong they were. How they were totally wrong, how the American people proved them wrong, and how if they don't admit that they're wrong in some way, they're going to lose their whole careers. That's how wrong. You know how Joe Biden lost that first presidential debate so badly that after the debate, he was no longer the nominee. There's losing debates and there's losing debates. And Joe Biden lost so badly, he ceased to be the nominee for president. A similar phenomenon is happening with the media here. There's getting a story wrong, and there's getting the story wrong. there's getting a story wrong, and then there's going to Mar-a-Lago and begging, pleading, as if on bended knee, please, Mr. Trump, don't destroy our whole careers. We're sorry we called you Hitler. Oh, man. Is this really how one would deal with Hitler? I don't think so. It seems like they were wrong about that. But they know. That show will be, if Trump wanted to, he could end that show tomorrow. And they know that. That's why they're going down and begging him. Some Democrats are a little less placid over the election victory. That would be people like AOC, who went on this bizarre rant about how progressives should react to the Trump election.
Because no is not a final answer. We need to have the mentality that no means find another way. No means try again. No means look somewhere else. No does not mean stop trying. Okay?
The party of consent, ladies and gentlemen. This from the party that brought you the Me Too movement. Here is AOC's rant on how no means try harder. That's right. Do these people hear themselves? They don't. They don't hear themselves. 4 years. Wow, man. Talk about a realignment. Talk about, at least they are introspective in a certain sense. AOC doesn't realize she's being introspective here because she's saying, no, the voters said no, and I don't care. We're going to keep pushing our unpopular policies. But she is undermining much of what the Democrats have said. Consent is not only the most important moral criterion, it's the only moral criterion. If two people agree to do something, then they have every right to do it. What consenting adults choose to do, even now it's consenting children, even though children can't give consent. But if a consenting child wants to castrate himself, that's absolutely his right, and he has to go through with it. Even though we have age of consent laws because children can't give consent. No, it's all about consent. Not only do they say it's the most important moral criterion, they say it's the only one. Notions of virtue, justice, all out the window. Consent is all that matters. No means no. Until the voters say no to the progressives. They say no actually means try harder. Imagine she gives this advice to a guy in a bar. Hey, listen, buddy, I know that woman said she doesn't want to talk to you. No just means try harder. There's no such thing as no. No is not final. You go up there, you pester her until she says yes. Yeah, she had the right to say no to you. You go there, you say, I won't take no for an answer. That's what you're saying to the voters. We won't take no for an answer. Okay, lady. See how that goes. Now, the Democrats are trying to push this very policy right now in the House of Representatives. Because women, to use the example of men and women generally like having their own bathrooms. Women like having their own spaces where they get changed, where they're a little bit vulnerable. And this is because there are sexual differences between men and women. And this is also because it's just proper and nice. And they want that. And Democrats are trying to force women to give up their private spaces. To say, no, you're going to use the bathroom in front of men. You're going to get naked in front of men. You're going to change in front of men in the locker room. And Democrats are trying to push this now, not only from Capitol Hill, but actually on Capitol Hill. And Republicans, I'm happy to say, are standing up to it. Before we get to that story, I want to tell you about my yes or no game with Tim Pool. So you know the yes or no game. You can get it at dailywire.com/shop. You can get the yes or no game along with multiple expansion packs. It is a great way to figure out how well you know your friends and family. It's a great way to spur conversations that are a little provocative. It would be a good game to have for Thanksgiving. See, maybe Christmas. The eggnog starts flowing. You see what people say. I just sat down with my friend, Tim Pool. The average 4B woman oath will last as long as Tim's cancellation of IRL. Wow.
To be fair, it was never an actual cancellation.
It wasn't a full-on, it was a raising the prospect of canceling.
Yeah.
But for the 4B women, these women are just sad and angry about other stuff.
That's one way to put it. I'd say histrionic.
Yeah. Go check out my yes or no with my friend Tim Pool at the Michael Knowles YouTube channel, and then go to dailywire.com/shop and you can get the yes or no game. Really, really good news coming out of Capitol Hill. 5 days ago on the show, 6 or 7 days ago, I pointed out in a Twitter thread that a identifying lawmaker has now been elected to Congress. This is the first time ever. And I said, no one's really talking about this, but this is going to be a big issue because Republicans are in control of Congress, and they're going to need to figure out if they're going to let this guy use the women's bathroom, as he certainly will want to do, or if they're going to hold the line and say, no, buddy, we'll be nice to you, but you got to use the men's bathroom because you're a man. That this is a significant question because if they let him use the women's bathroom, they are implicitly accepting every premise of. They are implicitly saying, okay, we go along with the ideology. President Trump just won the election. Republicans just won the election in no small part on popular opposition to ideology. Beyond the political considerations, ideology is just wrong. As a matter of justice, we should not accept it. It's not good for anybody, including the people who identify as. But if the Republicans allow the identifying lawmaker to use the women's bathroom, they're saying we accept. Or they can hold the line and say nobody, and it's going to create a big controversy, which Republicans are broadly averse to doing. So then on the show, I made this point and this call to action. You now have ideology for the first time ever in Congress, in a member of Congress. This guy presumably is going to want to use the women's bathroom. The Republicans control Congress. Are they going to permit this for the GOP leadership? Are they going to hold the line on this ideology? Are they going to defend their female members? Are they going to say, hey, Buster, you can pretend to be a woman, I guess, and there's not much we can do about it, but we ain't going to let you use the women's bathroom? Or Or are they going to go squishy and say, oh, this is going to be a big headache. We don't want to make a big deal of this. Fine, we'll just look the other way when you use the women's bathroom. Well, if they do that, they are implicitly accepting all of ideology. This isn't just a trivial matter. The left knows it's not a trivial matter. That's why they spend so much time and energy trying to force these kinds of crazy upheavals upon us, focused in no small part on bathrooms. If I were a female member of Congress, I would object to this. I would hold firm on this, guys. I know for any members who are listening and for staff members who are listening, there is a lot more being smuggled in here than just some confused man from Delaware into a bathroom. Well said, Michael. I couldn't have said it better myself. Anyway, I'm really glad to say that a Republican member of Congress has taken up the charge, Nancy Mace, who is not the most conservative member of Congress, but in many ways that's helpful, that it is her who's raising this issue. She is a relatively liberal on certain issues member of Congress. She's a woman. I believe she has been public about having experienced sexual assault before. So she's got some real ethos. She's got some real authority on this matter. And she says, never thought this would have to happen, but we're introducing a resolution banning biological men from entering protected spaces for women on Capitol grounds. Protecting biological women starts here and it starts now. Great stuff. Great stuff from Nancy Mace. I've mentioned before, I don't really like those terms, biological man, biological woman. I think those terms implicitly accept ideology as well, because they imply that there's some other kind of man, some other kind of woman. You could be a biological man, but a spiritual woman, which is absurd. It's a Gnostic heresy. But regardless, the fact that Nancy Mace is willing to use this kind of more liberal language to say, look, I'm not some far right-wing Bible thumping, whatever they say about us, but women get to have their own bathrooms, okay? Great stuff on Nancy Mace. Wonderful stuff. GOP leadership better get on board. That's all I'll say about that. GOP leadership better get on board. It's the right thing to do. It's a matter of justice, and it's a total political winner. This is a no-brainer. The guy, Tim McBride, who calls himself Sarah now, this Democrat member of Congress, he just posted, he said something to the effect of, well, I'll just pull it up. I actually pulled it up on my phone just before the show started. He says, everyday Americans go to work with people who have life journeys different than their own and engage with them respectfully. I hope members of Congress can muster that same kindness. Yes, I'm sure your future Republican colleagues will be kind to you, will be very respectful to you. But we're not going to lie for you. And we're not going to violate the legitimate rights of women. We're not doing that, okay? We're going to be really kind, but we're not going to lie. You can't make us lie. That's very disrespectful for you to expect us to lie for you. And in fact, it would be disrespectful to you for people to lie to you. And it's especially offensive to tell women that they no longer have any of their legitimate rights because you've decided to throw on stilettos one day. Not going to happen, okay? That's not kindness. That's not respect. You, sir, are being very disrespectful by demanding that of others, especially of women. How about you act like a man and act like a gentleman and stay out of the women's bathroom? Now, this is all really great news, obviously, assuming the Republicans hold the line, which, 50-50, I guess. Speaking of Republican wins, there's another win from the RNC. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has just shut down the Pennsylvania county's scheme to try to steal the Senate seat. Bob Casey is the Democrat incumbent there. He lost. Even the Associated Press, which is very liberal, as I've mentioned on the show today, the Associated Press called this race shortly after election night. It's over. Dave McCormick, the Republican, won, and the counties are trying to steal it. And the way the counties are trying to steal it is by counting ineligible ballots. You don't need to take my word for it. That's not me putting some spin on it. The counties themselves have admitted that the ballots they're trying to count are being counted in violation of a previous Supreme Court order. And they've joked about this. They've said, yeah, well, we all know people violate court orders. We all know that the law doesn't really matter in this country anymore. They're being provocative. They're admitting we're violating the law. Okay, well, yesterday, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just ruled again. Said the counting will not continue. These votes are not legit. So Bob Harvey Jr., chairman of Bucks County Elections Board, says, it is a pretty stupid thing to not count someone's vote simply because they didn't date an envelope for a ballot. The law needs to be changed. You got to sign your ballot, you got to date your ballot. Otherwise, you don't know. The person could have voted a week after the election. You don't get to vote a week after the election. There are rules to elections, and the people have the right to set those rules. So this Buck County Elections Board chairman, he doesn't like that because his guy lost. So he says, yeah, I'm just single-handedly going to change the rules. L'état, c'est moi. I think it's stupid, so I'm going to ignore the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says, nah, sorry, buddy. This rule shall be authoritative and controlling, says the court. Done. Happy to report yet another Democrat potential insurrection quelled. But it's not for lack of trying. The Democrats try to steal this stuff. What they were trying to do in Pennsylvania was exactly what they did in Minnesota successfully in 2008. 2008, you had a liberal Republican senator, but still a Republican, in Minnesota. He was running against Al Franken, the guy from Saturday Night Live. And Norm Coleman seemed to have won. Then the Democrats ordered recount after recount. And then a Minnesota Majority, a conservative organization, looked at some of the ballots that were being counted, and they noticed that hundreds of felons had illegally cast ballots. And felons are overwhelmingly likely to vote for Democrats. And actually, so many felons illegally cast ballots that there were more of those ballots than the margin of victory for Al Franken. In other words, very, very likely, almost certainly in my view, the Democrats stole that election through recounts and by counting ineligible votes. Exactly the same sort of thing that they were trying to do in Pennsylvania. Happily, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court shut that down. But in Minnesota, just this election cycle, an election judge was just indicted for allowing unregistered people to vote. This Minnesota judge, Hubbard County Auditor Kay Rave, looked into this, could not find any completed voter registration forms from the ballots that she received from Badura Township head election judge Timothy Michael Scouten. This is according to a criminal complaint that NBC Chicago has obtained. So this judge allegedly allowed people, even encouraged people to vote without being registered. Now, this is a small township. It's just 100 people in this township, 170 miles northwest of Minneapolis. This is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And this guy said, yeah, okay, you didn't register to vote. No big deal. You vote here. I'll deal with it. Now he's been indicted for that, which is good. I feel bad when people go to prison needlessly. I feel bad when people lose their jobs needlessly, when this didn't have to happen. If they had just followed the rules, if they had just done their jobs, had they just acted in good faith in the first place, had the Associated Press acted in good faith, almost 1 in 10 of their employees would not be fired right now. CNN employees would still have their job. MSNBC might not be on the chopping block. This Minnesota judge might not be going to jail, but they just can't help themselves. So this is a very serious violation. We have to protect the integrity of our elections. Democrats have been telling us that for years, when it suits them. Now, speaking of Democrat politicians going away, there's a great meme, an amazing meme that hit the internet yesterday. This would be Joe Biden giving one of his valedictory speeches in the Amazon rainforest, finishes speaking, and then just wanders off, apparently into the forest. Biden there in aviator sunglasses, wearing some kind of blue Panama shirt, just wandering, it would seem, off the path and just, into the forest. He's done. He's going into the forest. What was he doing? He was giving a speech on conservation and the climate. When I first saw this, I said, this has got to be AI or something. Why is he dressed like that? He looks so confused. He's now wandering into the rainforest in the Amazon in Brazil. But I guess that makes sense. The only way that this election cycle could possibly be crazier is if it ends with Joe Biden being eaten by a jaguar. God forbid. I don't want Joe Biden to be, but that's the only way, right? You get the sitting president loses a debate so badly that it's clear he's in serious dementia. He ceases to be the nominee. They replace him with a woman who's like the least popular woman in America. Then President Trump gets shot in the ear after Democrats call him an existential threat for years. But he survives somehow because of a last-minute turn of his head. And then he doesn't change his campaign schedule really at all. And then his opponents try to shoot him again. That doesn't work. And then he wins in a landslide. And then Joe Biden gets eaten by a jaguar in Brazil. That's the only way to keep the narrative up at this pace. The number one documentary of the decade, Am I Racist?, is now Academy Award submitted. The most asked question about the movie that we get is, was it real? The answer is yes. Everything you see in the movie is real. Lucky for us, Matt included exclusive bonus footage where he breaks down exactly how he pulled it all off. The only place to watch Am I Racist? And all the exclusive bonus content is on Daily Wire Plus. Stream it now. My favorite comment yesterday is from Mylene Morico, who says, if I'm called a white supremacist as a Dominican woman for following a Middle Eastern man who is fully God, I wouldn't even blink an eye at that absurdity. Of course, the Christians are white supremacists now. The African Christians, the Indian Christians, the Dominican Christians, and it's unclear. Are you talking about Dominican the order? Are you talking about Dominican the island in Latin America? It's very, very confusing, but no matter the complexity, any Christian is a white supremacist, so implies the Associated Press. Now, turning away from Biden, but sticking on people of a certain age, there's a story really hit me yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. 2 days ago it hit me, actually. It's called These Baby-Chasing Grandparents Are Turbocharging Demographic Shifts. From Austin, Texas to Charleston, South Carolina, golf and grandbabies beckon. The story is that millennials are leaving the coastal cities. They're leaving the liberal states, and they're moving to places, well, like Nashville, where I live. They're moving to Texas. They're moving to South Carolina or Florida. They're moving there because it's a lot easier to raise a family. It's much less expensive. Taxes are much lower. The people are more normal. You can send your kids to normal schools. It's really great. Highly recommended. If you're conservative. If you're libs, stay in California. I don't want to hear it. You stay there. You screw up your own politics. I don't need that in my state. But a lot of people are doing that. And then what this article is about is that those millennials' parents are following them to the southern suburbs. And they're doing it in no small part to raise their kids. So just a little bit from the article. It all started in the 1960s when baby boomers became the first generation to routinely move hundreds of miles for school or work. So it started with the boomers. Previously, people generally stayed in their towns. Maybe you'd go west, young man, but that was the exception, not the rule. Boomers were the first that said, okay, we're going to go far away for school. We're going to go move far away from our families and our communities. We're going to get things moving. Nashville, Tennessee-based Kinloch Partners, which rents out homes near large corporate offices in the Southeast, estimates that the retired parents of newly transferred executives live in and around 10% of them. They have a guaranteed income. They don't trash the house, says Chief Executive Bruce McNailage. Some pay a year of rent up front. So these are great tenants. They move down, they're retired, they have steady, reliable income. They don't have much to do. Jillian Held and her husband Jordan employ a nanny 3 days a week. Her parents take Tuesdays and Wednesdays, staying overnight at the couple's home, where they have their own bedroom. We fully talk to them like they're employees, said Jillian, 32. It's an ongoing joke that when they want to go on vacation, they have to take PTO. Ha ha ha. So, and I know people who do this, where the grandparents essentially raise the kids. And why are they doing that? This is the question that the article is not asking, because the answer is a little too politically incorrect. In some ways, it's really nice that the families are ending up together. The extended families across the generations are ending up together. Used to be, you were born in a town, you lived in that town, you died in that town. So maybe you'd have intergenerational housing, but you'd at least be near grandma and grandpa. And now kids don't really grow up near grandma and grandpa. So the way to fix that today is not that the kids move back to the parents' house. It's that the parents follow the kids and they raise the grandkids. Okay. In some ways, that's nice. The families are ending up together. But it is a little weird, isn't it? Especially when you factor in there's this real practical aspect to it, which is that the millennial kids need the parents, the grandparents, to raise the grandkids. Why is that? In part, it's because childcare is so expensive these days. Okay, well, what does that even mean, that childcare is so expensive? It means that people go out and pay someone else to raise their kids for most of the day, much of the day. Why do they do that? This is the part that even the Wall Street Journal article, which is quite good, I encourage you to read it, that they won't mention because it's politically incorrect. All of this is happening because women feel obligated to work outside of the home. Women always have worked, but now they feel obligated to work outside of the home. It's not just because women have the option to work outside of the home. The reason that the childcare is so expensive and they need grandma and grandpa to come down to raise the kids a couple days a week is because they have financial problems. They have financial problems because they require, at least in their minds, two incomes. It is not that women now have the opportunity on occasion to go out there and work outside of the home. It's that women, by and large, feel obligated to do so, which was the heart of the debate between feminist Betty Friedan and feminist Simone de Beauvoir. Feminist Betty Friedan said women should have the option to work outside the home if they want, but they should have the option to raise their families if they want, to be homemakers. And Simone de Beauvoir said no. Women cannot have the option to stay home and be homemakers and raise their kids, because if they have that option, too many of them will take it. And the women, therefore, will not be liberated as the feminists wanted them to. And that's what you're seeing here. Wouldn't it be so much easier, though? Think about how this is now. Many, many women wish that they could stay home, at least when their kids are little, and raise their kids. Many, many women wish that they didn't have to wake up every 45 minutes at night with the little baby and then go into the office the next day. Many, many women, but they just feel that they can't do that. They don't get enough maternity leave, and it's just too hard. So now we have a system where for many people, you say, my wife has to go out and work for some other guy so that this other guy can give her a paycheck that she will give to me so that I can either hire some other woman to raise my kids for me, or when that's not enough, so that we can ask our retired parents to move down to where we are, to uproot their lives, to move to where we are, to raise the children for us, which is, I guess, marginally better than paying someone else, a daycare worker or someone, to raise your kids for you. But it still seems pretty inefficient, doesn't it? What would happen if we just allowed women to raise their own kids again? I guess that might affect GDP. You'd have fewer economic transactions, but it seems simpler and probably better for the kid. But we don't permit that, because the culture tells women, you have to go out, you have to have a job, you have to be totally independent of a man, you have to prioritize your career, you should put off getting married, you should put off having kids. This is another issue, is now women aren't having kids in their early 20s, they're having kids in their early 30s or mid 30s or even later. So they're mid-career, they're working. It's even hard even if they are staying home, so then they need the extra help from the grandparents moving in. It's just so inefficient. It's so discombobulated. But that's what's happened. And this is not just a problem of the left. The left has pushed this through feminism, but it's also a problem of the financial right, the right that is disconnected from morality and traditional behaviors. This kind of joke that the couple has with the parents in this article, where they say, yeah, we treat them like employees. We say if they want to take vacation, they need to take PTO. There's a little truth to that joke. We treat all of these relationships as though they're purely financial, transactional. That you can swap out a mother raising a kid for an employee raising a kid or a grandparent raising a kid. Just seems a little inefficient to me. Entirely caused by a demand that we now make of women that they work outside the home. Now, speaking of women in history, one story I have to get to. At my dear alma mater, Yale, Yale is offering a new course, Beyonce Makes History. The course it gets better. Beyonce Makes History, Black Radical Tradition, Culture, Theory, and Politics Through Music. This is a class that will focus on the period of Beyonce's 2013 self-titled album through this year's Cowboy Carter. So it's not even all of Beyonce's career. We're so specialized in the universities now. It's only the last decade of Beyonce's career. It will be taught by Yale's African American Studies professor, here we go, Daphne Brooks, who is going to include footage of live performances for students to learn about Black intellectuals from Frederick Douglass. Okay, Frederick Douglass is good. To Toni Morrison. Oh, good grief. Good grief. Toni Morrison. Do we really need to read Toni Morrison? Okay. Now, it's funny to say Beyonce makes history. Beyonce did not make history. Beyonce did try to intervene in this political race. She endorsed Kamala, and Kamala lost. So she failed to make history, at least this time around. This is proof of something else. We talk about the cracking of authority and credibility of previously elite institutions, the New York Times, the Associated Press, the Democratic Party. Well, you got to throw Yale in there too. I say this as someone who I love my alma mater. I don't know if some of the people at my alma mater might not love me anymore, but I love my alma mater. Very grateful for everything Yale's done for me. However, this is a reminder that these elite schools are now, the value that they actually do bring, or the merit that they do convey, is really more just about getting in. It's not really about graduating. It's really easy to graduate these schools. It is still hard to get in unless you can say that you're a Native American Zoroastrian, which will give you a leg up. But barring that, you still need usually a high SAT score, and you have to be valedictorian or something like that. But it's hard to get in, very easy to graduate. So you don't necessarily learn all that much. You could take a class on Beyonce's radical tradition, culture, and theory. The institutions, like Yale, like Harvard, like Princeton, the institutions like the AP, the New York Times, they are losing their credibility. They can still claim to maybe have a little bit, but I don't know. How much longer can these institutions maintain their prestige and their influence before reality catches up with them? Okay, I'm real excited to have a couple guests coming on the Membrum Segmentum today. And that's because I'm really excited to announce that Mayflower cigars are now available in another state. They are available now for the first time in the state of Nevada. We will get to that in a moment. First, though, I got to say goodbye to the hoi polloi on YouTube. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Knowles at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.